My name is Dr. Tushar Mehta. I'm from Canada, and I did my residency there in family medicine. I've also practiced addictions medicine, and I've mostly practiced emergency medicine, or what you call A&E in some countries. I have an interest in international health, and I do work in India and a few other places. And on top of that, I have a strong interest in plant-based diet and health. So when I say plant-based diet and health, you can also say vegan diet and health. And I'm here on behalf of Hina Modi and plantshift.com. I'm just going to give you pointers that if you are having a plant-based diet, then how you can optimize your eating. All right. So first of all, I'd like to talk about what the 4 major food groups are for a plant-based diet. I covered that in the first video, and they are fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, or what we also call pulses or beans and lentils and all that stuff. That's all one food group. There's an intermediate group. It kind of straddles, maybe it's kind of in the beans group or the lentils group, or it could be in the grains group, but that's nuts and seeds. Okay, nuts and seeds, maybe that's a 5th food group, but whatever. Also kind of a food group, all right? And then there's things like oil, salt, sugar that we also add to foods, having varying effects. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these things, okay? My first piece of advice to people is to eat the rainbow. Eating from all 4 or 5 food groups, and eating things of all varieties, different colors of foods, different colors of fruits and vegetables, different colors of beans, legumes, lentils, and this variety is going to give you all the nutrients you need. It's a very, very high nutrient dense food, okay? And you're going to get so much goodness from it, and that's how we're going to optimize. There's people who want a plant-based diet or vegan or vegetarians or whatever who have terrible diets. They're eating junk food and Coca-Cola and their ramen noodles and white bread and crackers. All that stuff is really bad for you, okay? So we want to have whole foods as much as possible from all food groups, choosing different colors because different colors oftentimes have different kinds of nutrients, and maximizing on that, okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing is, let's talk about the stuff that you don't want to eat, okay? So sugars and simple carbs, refined carbs, are shown to be bad. They do increase perhaps cancers to some extent, and definitely diabetes and vascular disease, all right? So sugar, and that includes agave. People may say that agave is okay, but it's not. And some people say, well, you better have sugar rather than having artificial sweeteners. But the thing is that artificial sweeteners, there may be some evidence of harm in some cases of them. It's kind of nebulous. They're not necessarily that bad as people make them out to be on the internet. However, okay, let's say hypothetically they could cause some harm, artificial sweeteners. Well, sugar causes worse harm. So then I would say just avoid sugar altogether. Okay, and if you're gonna eat something sweet, if you have to eat something sweet, or you eat a lot of it, if you drink Coke all the time, choose a Diet Coke. It's an artificial sweetener, but it's better than sugar. Okay, you're choosing the lesser of 2 evils in that case. All right, and the one exception may be stevia. Okay, stevia is from a plant. I'm not sure if of all the research on it, but it's again not something you want to consume all the time in high quantities. But instead of having too much sugar, switch over to have some stevia. All right. The next thing is oil. All right. So there is some evidence that things like olive oil and canola oil can be beneficial for you. So moderate amounts of this oil may be protective against heart disease and maybe sometimes even diabetes. There are some studies showing this, okay? So it's kind of conflicting because the studies where people are on that really low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet, they can even reverse heart disease, okay? They can even reverse heart disease. However, at least compared to people who are consuming regular diets, those having more olive oil, do show olive oil, canola oil, those kind of oils, do show some benefits, all right? So not every single person is gonna go on a really, really low-fat, plant-based diet. That's not for everybody. So you can have some oil, all right? But choose the olive oil, canola oil, maybe some flax oil, that kind of stuff. Soybean oil is also considered to be good. Sunflower oil, safflower oil are considered to have a less favorable omega-6, omega-3 profile. I don't think there's enough research on this to really show that it's bad for you, but we think that the other stuff may be better. There is some evidence that the other stuff may be worse, so you just go for the oils that I mentioned that are more likely to be good and that have some evidence of being good for you. Okay, there's that. So we talked about oil, we talked about carbohydrates, white bread and that kind of stuff is also part of the sugar family. Avoid that, go for whole grains, okay? And salt. Salt is the other thing. low salt. Okay, there's a lot of, you can have Mr. Noodles or ramen noodles or that kind of stuff, high foods that are in sodium. Let's avoid too much sodium. Let's talk a little bit about protein. All right, so now a lot of people think that you can't get protein as a plant-based diet person or as a vegan. Okay, indeed, there are some people who become vegetarian or maybe from a traditional vegetarian family who actually have very low protein diets. I've seen this, and the protein diet can be too low. I've seen that happen. Okay, but it's easy to get protein in your plant-based diet. You can have, the trick is having lots of beans, lots of lentils, and those kind of things. Soy, as I mentioned, is a really good source of protein, and we're going to talk a little bit more soy in another video. Whole grains have a good amount of protein, about 10% protein by weight. So does rice, and I recommend people have brown rice, okay, whole grain rice. And then there's quinoa, and there's hemp seeds, and people sometimes have hemp protein powders. So those are the good sources of protein. And let's break that down a little bit more as well. Now, a lot of people come from having a meat-based diet, and now they're switching over to being plant-based. It's difficult for a lot of people to make that switch. They're used to certain type of foods, but they feel restricted that they can't have these sort of artificial, not artificial, but these veggie meats. I like to call them veggie meats. They're kind of meat, they're chewy, but they have veggie hot dogs, burgers, and all that kind of stuff. They say, no, that's too processed, I can't eat that. But there is some evidence showing that those foods definitely have an advantage over animal-based foods of a similar nature. The brand that I commonly recommend to people, and it's not that I'm getting paid by these guys, but just reading the ingredients, I look at the Tofurky products, and I like them amongst these products because they have generally lower amounts of fat, okay, higher amounts of protein. A Tofurky sausage has double the amount of protein than a meat-based sausage of a similar size, but half the amount of fat and half the amount of sodium. So these transitional foods, what we call these veggie meats, in some cases they do have somewhat higher amount of sodium, and some of them do have higher amounts of fat, but choose the ones like that have overall lower amounts of fat than the equivalent meat-based product, lower amounts of sodium, and higher amounts of protein. Another good thing to have is soy milk. Soy milk has a lot of protein, and it's a great way to get the soy that can probably reduce prostate cancer, breast cancer. Also very good evidence that consuming soy increases bone strength and also maybe helps prevent a little bit of heart disease. So a lot of good things there. Soy is indeed a superfood. There's going to be another video about that. Okay. When we talk about protein requirements for people require about 0.6 to 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass per day. So let's say you weigh 100 kilograms, you need about 60 to 80 grams of protein per day in your diet for the average person. Okay. And so yes, it varies depending on your weight. Now, some people have increased protein needs, all right? Who are they? Athletes. So if you're an athlete, you may need more protein. Now, you don't need gazillions amount of protein. Some people eat too much protein, but you may need 2.5 grams per kilogram per day if you're like a bodybuilder or something like that. And there's a lot of very successful vegan bodybuilders. I think the current Mr. Universe actually just became vegan, and since then he's actually put on more muscle, and he says that he's even stronger, okay? That's a story that you hear from a lot of people who've been vegan bodybuilders. There's long distance athletes, some of the people who are the top Ironmen in the world, like Rich Roll and Dave Scott. They've been vegan while they're doing all these Ironman competitions. So they may need more. Who else needs more? Elderly people. If you're over 65, you need more protein, okay? So what do you need? You don't need massive amounts of protein, but just make sure that you get 1 gram per kilogram per day. All right. Sometimes for elderly people or these athletes, a lot of athletes take sort of a supplement of protein. They take protein shakes. Excellent vegan protein shakes available. All right. Who else needs more protein? The pregnant women need more protein as well, and pregnant and breastfeeding. So again, make sure you're getting about 0.8 to a gram per kilogram of body mass of protein, and that's going to be better for you. Okay. So elderly people, pregnant and lactating women, athletes, they need more protein. Protein is going to be good for the strengthening of the bones as well. Remember the advantage of plant-based protein. A lot of the studies show that those people having plant-based protein have less diabetes, less cancer, less heart disease compared to those eating animal protein. So there seems to be some advantage. But I want to direct you to a video by a doctor I know from the United States, Dr. Melton Mills. He's an intensive care doctor, but also interested in research on plant-based diet. And he has a great video on YouTube talking about how what are the difference between herbivores and omnivores and carnivores, right? And how many of our physiologic differences put us on the side of herbivores. Now his video is like very thorough. I think it's more than an hour long, going through an immense amount of details. But one thing that I like to just to show people to demonstrate the difference is that if you've ever seen, have you ever seen a dog? If anybody's ever seen a dog eat an animal, a live animal, like a pigeon or something like that. I've unfortunately seen that kind of thing when I've been traveling in India and so forth. A dog will just grab a pigeon. Okay, it's able to catch it really fast. All right, faster than we would be able to do that, and then eats the whole pigeon. A small dog, I've seen like a dog that's pretty much a puppy, eat almost entire pigeon, scarf it all down. The head, the feathers, the feet, everything went down. Just bit off a wing and then maybe eat the wing later on. It's able to digest the bones, digest the stool that is in the system, digest the intestines, and digest the feathers. It's able to do that because it has that much acid in its stomach that it can digest all those things. And the type of GI tract and the type of esophagus that can swallow all that. And often they eat meat that is already kind of rotting and so forth as well, and not get sick from it, again because the acid in their system and everything like that is able to just nullify those things. Whereas humans would get sick if there was just some dead animal and we ate part of it without cooking it. We wouldn't, we would get sick in most cases. All right. When you look at how humans have been eating animals for some few thousand years. And the way we've done it is when we had advanced tool use. So we may not think that something like a spear or a knife or something like that is that advanced, but actually that's quite a significant development in our technology to get a bow or something like that to get an animal, or a net, all right, to catch it, or a hook and string and so forth. Those are advanced complex tools that we use to get the animal. And then what we do is we use other tools, such as knives, to cut away parts of the animals that we can't eat. All right, we'll cut away the intestines and just basically select very specific parts of the animal, and the rest cannot be eaten unless it's processed in some different way. And then we do another thing. We cook the food. We take the food, we heat it up, all right, and we cook it, and then it can be eaten. So I don't call humans omnivores. I think that's a bad terminology. Omnivores can eat all that stuff uncooked, catch without any tool whatsoever, and eat the whole animal in most cases, or even rotting parts of the animal, and still be okay and survive on that. But we are technivores. When we developed pretty advanced technology, right, in Paleolithic times or whatever it is, it's with that advanced technology that we're able to eat animal-based foods. And of course, in that time, in the time of most of human history, when people are not getting enough to eat, when you're not getting enough to eat, you're always living or dying based on just that additional food that you can get. Something that's high in protein and calories, getting it all at once, could be something that is a survival advantage. But in certain parts of the world where people had that same survival advantage from having high density plant-based foods, like in China, they had soybeans. Soybeans have as much or more protein content than animal-based foods. They also have high fat content, and soybeans are sort of held in very high esteem in many of the Eastern cultures because of that, just as lentils are in other places and so forth. So there are many foods that have high density protein that are not animal foods as well. However, they don't cause certain long-term diseases that animal-based foods cause in humans. Right now, in this time of human history, most of us get enough to eat, but the type of diseases that we're fighting is not starvation. We're getting the option of getting our calories and protein from many different sources and get plenty that we need. However, what we lack, the disease that we suffer from, are the cancers, the diabetes, the heart attacks, the strokes, and some other kinds of diseases that even I didn't get into so forth. But there's some research to show about prevention with plant-based foods. Okay, so what about B12? If we are evolved to eat plants, why don't we get the B12? Well, the answer is that basically animals don't make B12. A cow doesn't make B12 and then put it into the milk. An animal doesn't make B12 and put it into its flesh and then we can eat that animal. The only living things that make B12 are basically bacteria. Certain types of bacteria produce B12. And so when a herbivore is eating plants. The plant doesn't have B12, but when you're eating the plant is covered with bacteria. You're just eating from the ground or from trees and drinking water from the pond or the stream or the lake. You're always consuming bacteria or bacteria contaminated water or water that's being filtered through the soil and into the stream that then contains B12. So we're always getting B12. If you went to your backyard, took a bunch of dirt, mixed it with water, shook it up, and then filtered out the dirt, and just drank that water would have a certain amount of B12. Or if you just ate a lot of dirt with your food, just pulled a carrot and ate the carrot without washing it, you're going to have some B12. So I don't recommend that you eat soil or dirt or mud or drink from ponds or those kind of things. We wash our food, so we're washing off the B12. We just have to replace the B12, okay? So a lot of foods are supplemented with B12. You buy soy milk and those kind of things. There's B12 in there. That's great. That's pretty much what I do. But for some people, they don't absorb B12 quite as well, and they get low B12 very easily. Now, in my family practice, when I was doing a lot of family practice, I did a lot of B12 testing on people. I found people who are meat eaters, vegetarians, vegans, or fish eaters. A lot of people had B12 deficiency. It's very common. So whether you are plant-based or not, get your B12 checked once in a while. But you take 1,000 microgram tablets, you can even take half or a quarter, 2 or 3 times a week, and you're done. It's very cheap, it's very easy. All it is filtered B12 from bacteria, and they put it into a pill, and it's super cheap. Now, especially if you're pregnant or lactating, so breastfeeding, okay, you especially need B12. Elderly people have digestive issues in many cases. Make sure you're testing and getting your B12. You don't have to test every year. I tested mine a few years back, and it's fine. My diet hasn't changed. I'll test it again after a couple of years. But if you're in a more sensitive time of life, like I said, pregnancy, prior to pregnancy, lactation, elderly age, whatever, some other chronic disease, get it tested a little bit more often than that, okay? And you don't need injections. A lot of people think they need injections because, they're vegetarian or even meat eaters. I see a lot of people coming into their doctor for injections of B12. That's ridiculous. If you take 1,000 microgram tablet, as I mentioned, you only need 3 micrograms per day, then you're going to take that, you're going to absorb part of that B12 no matter what, okay? And the extra B12 that you absorb through an injection or through a tablet like that just goes into the urine anyways. It's a water-soluble vitamin, it just goes into the pee. You do not need injections. The last thing is that for vegan children, all right, and babies, children, once they start eating their food, okay, and they're not breastfeeding anymore, when they're breastfeeding, they're going to get B12 from mom, but like when they're eating their own food, remember to make sure that they get food that is also supplemented with B12. This is the single only supplement that anybody needs if they are being vegetarian, all right? Protein, everything else, calcium, everything can be, just from your normal food. So the references for every single video that I have are going to be downloadable from the description box, where you can click and download the entire set of references, and then just scroll down to the relevant references. If it's a video on diabetes or cancer or something like that, scroll down to the relevant section and take a look at the references that I'm speaking about. In my videos, I'll generally discuss one reference, but it's going to take too long to discuss 10 references and you'll be bored out of your mind. So I'll discuss one, and then you can go into the reference list and look at more references that are talking about the same topic. And it's important not just to have one reference, but to have multiple references that discuss a topic, because then you're seeing that different studies are being done in different places by different people, and they're getting similar results that are reinforcing each other, okay? So that's another good thing to look at.